We good start?
Yeah, we're good to go.
So, good evening everybody. Welcome to this first live stream for the caterhamracer.com Caterham 420R race series. And it is strange times that you find this in, of course, with everything that's going on in the world. But for those who are Caterham racing fans and club racing fans alike, hopefully we can take your mind off it for the next roughly hour and a half or so with the action that's going to be taking place very shortly. Scott Woodward's here in the virtual commentary booth, self-confessed Caterham racing fanatic and also championship commentator for Caterham Motorsport at most of their circuit events in the UK. And also in the broadcast booth controlling what you see on screen tonight is the 2018 Caterham 420R champion turned sim racing extraordinaire Chris Hutchinson. I'm sure he'll put up every now and again when he wants to give his opinion or his input on something happening out on track. But we've got a great field here tonight of varying different experience levels and very different levels of the Caterham spectrum, both in the Caterham Motorsport Championships and also drivers through from the Caterham Graduates spectrum as well as one or two other personalities from throughout the Caterham paddocks. You're seeing here the last couple of minutes of practice before we go into a 10-minute qualifying session and then two 15-minute races to entertain everyone tonight. As you can see, we are in a virtual representation of the Snetterton 300 circuit based in Norfolk, pretty much 3 miles exactly. And this would have been the second, we're following the same calendar that originally the Caterham Motorsport 420R Championship would have run. So we started off with the first couple of rounds away from broadcast at Silverstone on the international circuit. And I can fill you in to say that it was 2 victories for Harry Senior, as he picked up 2 wins on that evening, and it was a second place each for David Rowe and Steve McMaster, and also there was a 3rd place for David Rowe and a 3rd place for Chris Hutchinson as well, so he picked up a 3rd in that second race too. So, some of the drivers on track at the moment, quickest in practice for what it's worth is Harry Senior. So Harry himself, to give a bit of a bio on him, 19 years old, he's been sim racing and go-karting, but he was doing Magnificent Sevens in a Super Sport and 1 or 2 Graduate Sigmax rounds in 2018. He did a full season of the 310R Championship with Caterham Motorsport, picked up 14th place in the standings, his best result being a 6th, and he was going to do a combination of 310R and Graduate Sigmax Championships, and still is likely to do so whenever racing is able to get back underway in the real world. He's certainly showing his proficiency behind the wheel of a virtual Caterham 420R. This should hopefully be a bit of practice here for the 10-minute qualifying session. We're looking here on screen at James Murphy, or the man which I've nicknamed Superman. He's the 2018 Road Sport champion, and also he was a former Caterham Academy champion as well. So certainly well voiced in Caterham racing in the last few years, so you go on board with him. And that's pretty much a representation of how his steering's going, and he almost ran into the back of one of the cars with a DPR Motorsport livery. So James was set to compete in 310R this season, and again still is until we get racing back underway. He's currently sat at the moment in 7th place in times because Paul Fernerhuff has just gone to 3rd fastest. We tick down the last couple of moments of the session, and just for those wondering on the platform, this is Assetto Corsa, and there's plenty of different mods, different versions of circuits that you can pick up, but we've got such a well put together mod here for the Caterhams. There is also a separate champion that's taking place for the Academy spec cars, and that usually takes place on a Monday evening. So there'll be 2 different ends of the Caterham ladder, from the bottom all the way to the very top. Look at Mark Ryder here. Now those who know Caterham Motorsport circles and Caterham car circles in general will know that Mark Ryder used to be a mechanic for Caterham, and he does also compete in a Boss Racing modified Caterham from time to time as well. I think mainly with the Classic Sports Car Club, if I'm correct. But more recently he's dipped into the world of spannering for Porsche and also spannering for an LMP2 team or two. I think he's even gone to Le Mans. So he's certainly branching out in the world of motorsport as a mechanic. He's also quite a well-versed sim racer, currently showing his skill at the moment. I don't think he's put his time on the board just yet. No, not yet, he hasn't, but out of 21 cars that are in the server for this first broadcast, this second meeting of the caterhamracer.com 420R Championship, he'll certainly try and improve as best he can. And so Harry Senior currently fastest on a 2 minutes 6.118. We see James Fowler here. James Fowler was one of the Caterham Academy White Group drivers last year. He was usually the man that picked up 3rd place when either Tom Willis or Blair McConaughey were trading 1st and 2nd places between each other on the podium. And Fowler at the moment is, again, he's 11th quickest at the moment on a 2 minutes 8.647. Just to give you a bit of a comparison to the lap time difference between the guys here in the sim and the real world drivers. To give you a comparison, in the Super Pole shootout, which is a standalone sort of single lap shootout in the real world 420R Championship, the Super Pole lap time, which I admittedly was in slightly more exceptional and ideal circumstances in terms of conditions and tyre grip and everything else, was a 2 minute 1.835. So we're not going as quickly here, but then it'll be slightly different physics on the tyre compound. There might be slightly different fuel loads, where some of the cars would have gone out on a lighter fuel load, and the circuit would have been a little more grippier as the session went on. The clock has gone to 0 for the practice session, so we're going to get into the 10-minute qualifying very shortly. It's a pretty simple 10-minute dash. Get out on track and set as quick a lap time as possible to get yourself a front row slot or as best a position on the grid. And just to confirm, Harry Senior was the man that got the fastest time in practice from David Rowe, who is of course the son of Derek Rowe of DPR Motorsport. And David, I know, is racing from the DPR Motorsport sim at the DPR Motorsport facility, so he will be using that to good effect. Paul Fernahau was third quickest from Steve McMaster, Steve Arnell, then Matthew Lewis, Chris Skillicorn, James Murphy, Mark Ryder and Andy Lees, who was one of our road sport drivers last year in the Caterham Motorsport ladder. So we're just getting shaped up for 10 minutes here of qualifying. Expect the pole time to be somewhere in the mid to low 2 minute 6s, as we saw in practice. One or two drivers would have used that session to just dial their car in a little bit more to get it up to speed and hopefully to be in almost qualifying spec. As you can see, Harry Senior set the fastest first and third sectors on his way to the fastest lap of the session. Ultimately, it wasn't the fastest second sector of anyone on that lap, but he still made the most of it. So the 10-minute qualifying session is now underway. And let's see if we can pick up the first couple of cars heading out onto track. First car's heading out appears to be number 40. Well, Harry Senior is also going out as well, so they're all pouring out, as they tend to do in real Caterham racing. This is not Formula 1 where you wait for a gap and then go out. Everyone dives out at once because it's a short session and traffic is going to be at an absolute premium. You have to try and find as much space as possible. If you're trying to get a good lap time, locking up's not going to help you out, and possibly putting a flat spot or wearing out your tyre by a couple of percentages more than you want to. You want to keep the car in as ideal condition as you can. Harry Senior's getting caught up behind somebody on his out lap here, but these guys will certainly try to treat this as a bit of a race when all they're trying to do is find a little bit of extra track time.
Absolutely. With only a 10-minute qualifying session, it's got over 2 minutes per lap. You're only going to get sort of 4, maybe 5 max laps. So this is just like it is in the real thing, actually jockeying for position on the way to set your first lap time. We'll see, I think, towards the end of the lap, they might start leaving little sort of gaps to sort of give themselves a little chance to make sure people can make a mistake.
Yeah, it's usually towards the end of the lap where drivers will start to back off a little bit to try and find a few seconds worth of track space in front of them, which is important. But also, another key thing could also be here is that drivers will use the cars in front and the cars around them to get a tow, because as many will know from Caterham racing, to be put politely, these aren't the most aerodynamic cars, even though they've got quite a blunt sort of short front end on them. Because of that, they do punch quite a large hole in the air, even though with the 420Rs it's very much almost a speedster type chassis with a roll cage over the top of it to make sure it fits all the mandatory safety requirements. But in terms of how well these cars can run in packs together, and Chris will know this from having raced for several years now, is that these cars, when they're on their own, they're fairly quick, but when they're all together in a pack, it's almost as if you get 5 or 6 cars together, it's almost like it's one long caterpillar of a giant Caterham in itself, because they're all punching a massive hole through the air, and usually what you'll find is one group of 4 or 5 cars will start to hold each other up in battle, the next group behind will catch up, and that lead group usually starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger as the race goes on. But you'll also see it in qualifying, where you'll see groups of cars go around together to give each other a tow, whether from the same team or not, or the same garage, and therefore drivers will start to take turns of being at the front to punch the hole in the air and someone else at the back when they're getting 5 cars worth of a tow on the run down the straight. So you'll see differing strategies, not just in the race, particularly in qualifying here, the trade-off between track space around you but also trying to get a tow from the cars in front to get that little bit of extra speed down the straight.
The tow in the Caterham is obviously legendary stuff. In the simulator world it's not quite as powerful, but you certainly do get it when you're running in a pack. we say it's about a second to half a second behind where you're going to start feeling it in the simulator.
And some drivers I know in real life with the Caterham stimulus if they do it too much, it starts to overheat the engine a little bit. So sometimes you'll see them in real Caterham racing, they'll start to just move out offline from behind the car just to get a little bit of cool air into the front of the car where the radiator is, to just keep it, and the intercooler is, just to keep it a little bit chilled to make sure the car's not overheating, because of course the hotter the engine gets, the less efficient it is. It might start burning more fuel to cool itself down a bit more, but of course if you can get cool air to it, usually the colder the engine and also the colder the fuel mixture, usually you get the colder air that goes in, it might even start producing a bit more power and being a little bit more efficient in terms of its power delivery. So we're on board with Harry Senior. He hasn't got the luxury of the tow as he heads down the Bentley straight towards this very tricky braking zone with Brundle and Nelson. Starts to brake just before he goes turning in underneath the bridge, and it's a really tricky section. Of course, and Chris, you've raced here, of course, and done many laps around here. That particular section of Brundle and Nelson, it's tricky enough particularly on the entry through Brundle, because you are having to trail brake quite a lot unless you get all your braking done mostly just before you go under the bridge. But it's also tricky here when you go through Caterham. You have to brake and turn at the same time.
They're both absolutely a balancing act between your cornering and your grip and braking all at the same time. It's hard on the car and it's really hard to get right. And that's the difference between sort of a driver can find that in a real lot of time in those kind of corners. It's good stuff from Harry. That was a really good lap. He got a bit compromised early on in the lap, but actually set a reasonable time, 2:06.6. So I think that's going to be a good punt for the pole position.
It's definitely a good time. It's that half a second off what he managed in practice, but I suspect he may have had the benefit of a tow down the straights. The car that was around him was Matthew Lewis, who's gone to second fastest. Mark Bennett, who was looking to join 420Rs in the real world this year. He's a former Honda VTEC racer and a really lovely looking S2000 before, but he's joined the 420R ranks. He's currently gone fifth fastest. Looks like the third place lap time has now gone to Chris Skillicorn. And it was indeed, because now Steve McMaster, who's a Caterham Graduates driver, has jumped up to second place. Steve McMaster has done quite a bit if you look at his little bio here for a second, or at least I was going to, but Steve McMaster's done some Caterham Graduates racing before, so he's well versed at least in real world Caterham racing, but certainly also put forward some skills before as well.
Steve joined us on the server quite a number of times, and every time he joins us on our server, he's right at the front of the grid, so expect to see good things. He's obviously put it on third already, but I think you might see that even move further on depending on when he gets a clear lap.
David Rose popped up to second place from the comfort of his DPR sim chassis. A couple of the cars exploring the limits and beyond of Snetterton. Eric Stiniak, steaming hairpin, couldn't quite catch who they were, but hopefully not disrupting too many people to lap times. David Rowe, though, is on another flying lap. He's less than a tenth of a second away from Harry Senior's best time, with only 4 minutes of the session to go. So Chris was certainly right that you don't get it is quite a long lap here, around about sort of just over 2 minutes. You don't get very many opportunities to get a good lap here, only really around about 3 or 4 times. And Rowe getting a little sideways on the exit through Hamilton and locking up into Oggies, which is a very early apex right-hander that opens out on the exit. Locking up's not going to do him all that well. So a little bit of a slightly ragged lap here from David Rowe. You might want to possibly back off and try another lap for the next one to get through there, but because usually if the lap looks boring, it's usually quite quick, whereas if it's flamboyant, it might look spectacular, but you lose a bit of time through the corner, especially on the exit.
Dave's one of those drivers, though, that can make a flamboyant lap still go quite quick, so I'm still expecting he's got a bit of traffic to contend with here, but he's definitely got a raggedy style, but nevertheless he's absolutely rapid.
Yeah, definitely making the most of it. Third fastest in the times. Now Matthew Lewis has actually popped into second place, still behind Harry Senior, who has lowered the pole time by another couple of tenths. He's gone to a 2 minutes 6.417. So we did say a low to mid 2 minutes 6 lap time was going to be the target time for pole position, as we now still see David Rowe work his way into Murray's a little sort of deep into the apex going over the curb there. He'll try and set the car up now for a run down the pit straight to have another go. So 2 minutes 40 on the clock to go. Up into sixth has gone Tom McEwing. Sixth for Tom McEwing. Now he's someone who hasn't raced Caterham in real life yet, but he's signed up to do next year's academy in 2021. But he's been playing racing games his whole life. This is his first proper sim racing experience. Sounds a bit like me, really. Apart from the only thing is I'm not doing 2021 academy, unfortunately. So, but seventh place for him so far, because actually jumping up for the new time has gone Steve Arnell. Steve himself, looked at his profile, he would have been racing Caterham Graduates in the Sigmax class this year, but he's been pretty consistent with them, and he is pretty well versed in and experienced in sim racing because he has competed in the iRacing Mazda MX-5 Cup, and he says that out of 32,000 drivers, he was able to place himself 117th, which, given the number of drivers there, Chris, that's no mean feat to be just outside the top 100 in the world in the iRacing MX-5 Cup, and that's a competitive championship in itself, given the level of competition.
No mean feat at all, and Steve has been a regular on our server in our sessions, and he's absolutely solid as a rock as a driver. He's maybe doesn't always set the fastest lap time, but always there or thereabouts, very consistent during the races.
So we'll look out for him. Currently sat 5th fastest, 2 minutes 7.768. We'll give you a quick run through the top 10 as it stands then. So Harry Senior on provisional pole position for race number 1 tonight here at Snetterton 300. Matthew Lewis is second quickest, just a fraction over 2/10 of a second off the pole time. Then literally a fraction of a tenth over a fraction over a tenth, if I can get my words out. Back is David Rowe in 3rd place. As I watched that, James Murphy's popped up to 4th on a 2 minutes 7.715. So he's the highest placed driver who hasn't gone sub 2 minutes 7. Steve McMaster rounds out the top 5. Arnell is 6th. Paul Fernahau, again, literally before my eyes, has gone to 7th place on a 2 minutes 7. It's changed again because now up into 5th has gone Chris Skillicorn on a 2 minutes 7.295. So Skillicorn now 5th, Fowler is now 6th position, McMaster 7th, and then Arnell, Fernahau and McEwing round out the top 10 from Ryder, Bennett, Hilton, Dan Halstead, who was in 270Rs last year, and Andy Steele rounds out the top 15. Then Mark Lipitsky, and in 17th place we've got a driver under the name of PT Sports Cars, but I can't quite tell who that might be.
That will be head of PT Sports Cars, and that will be Ian racing that car.
Okay, Ian Payne. So that'll be Ian Payne. Excellent, so Ian Payne. I think they got on their simulator actually at Motorsport Days Live, the first time we had it. I think I got some quite nice tuition from Ben Tuck, who was obviously part of it before, and I think raced them in Caterham. So I think he managed to get my lap times down pretty well. I think I won a Lego Caterham that day for getting that good lap time. But that's another time, enough matter for another time. Rest of the order: Andy Lees, who was a Rotorsport driver last year, is 18th quickest. Jeff Newman 19th, and Alan Curtis, Richard Hoare, and Jamie Elwood, who is another Caterham Graduates racer, rounds out the 22 cars that have set a lap time so far. The time for qualifying has hit 0. So anyone on a lap so far will be allowed to finish it, and I'm not sure. Fortunately, we don't have sector time, sadly. So whether anyone else is going to go quicker or not remains to be seen when they cross the line. And if they do go quicker,
James Murphy, I wanted to fill in that he actually only finished building his simulator late last night, so he has up until now not been able to race, and he has shown some really good times. Unbelievable that he's sort of put himself up in the top 5 there, I'd say.
He's done a pretty good job to only have to finish building it last night and to already be 5th quickest. Certainly showing his prowess not only at the wheel of a sim, but also as well of the achievements he's done in the Caterham as well. As we were looking at that as well, Ian Payne under the name of PT Sports Cars, he has popped up into 12th place with that lap time, so that's a good effort from Ian to set the last lap time. Now, Skillicorn has improved his lap time also. He's now gone into the top 5, or at least remained there, by improving his time to a 2 minutes 7.046. So the last couple of cars will come across the line. Up to 18th place has gone Alan Curtis on a new lap, 2 minutes 9.9 for him. So he's popped inside the top 20. The rest of the cars coming through. Jamie Elwood also with a strong lap time at the last gasp, with 13th fastest for him. But no change, it seems, from anyone else around the top 10, unless we're going to see Steve Arnell going past the pits now and improve, which he doesn't. He does improve his time, but doesn't improve his positions. He will stay in 8th place. So, getting ready for the first of 2 races tonight, 2 15-minute races here at Snetterton 300, the second round of the caterhamracer.com Caterham 420R series, or esports series if you like. And Harry Senior is the man that will start on pole position for race 1. David Rowe will start alongside him on the front row of the grid. Then it's Matthew Lewis and Steve McMaster on the second row. Chris Skillicorn and former 2-time Caterham champion James Murphy is on row 3 in 6th. Then James Fowler and Steve Arnell from Paul Fernahau and Tom McEwing to round out the top 10. 11th fastest on row 6 is Mark Ryder alongside Ian Payne of PT Sports Cars. Then it's Jamie Elwood and Mark Bennett, Mike Hilton and Mark Lipitsky. And Lipitsky, and then Dan Halstead, Andy Steele, Alan Curtis and Andy Lees, just before the countdown timer goes before we end qualifying. Last couple of cars on the grid appear to be the last 2 lap times, which was Jeff Newman and Richard Hall.
We've got 2 minutes for the cars to grid up, so we've actually got a little bit of time before the lights go out.
So whilst we think about that then, let's get your thoughts then, Chris. Given the form from the first rounds at Silverstone, which you competed in, and also what we've seen so far in practice and qualifying, is the prediction for the race victory? We know in Caterham racing it's never as simple, because there's a saying in Caterham racing, even though the slipstream is reduced here, the saying is always the worst place you want to be is, ironically, on a circuit like this, in the lead, exiting the last corner on the last lap, because there's no guarantee that many people have found out that you'll stay there by the time you get to the checkered flag. Obviously, Harry on pole position, David Rowe alongside some very strong drivers towards the front, but of course we've got James Murphy, who is putting himself in 6th position. It's not as clear cut, I think, by saying either just Senior or Rowe will win this. I'm sure there's at least looking at the drivers. I'm sure anyone from at least the first 4 rows can very easily put in a good performance and put themselves at least into a podium position here, Chris.
I think mistakes and losing the rear end. It's very easy to lose the rear end of the car around Snetterton here, and I think that's going to cost more time than anything else. So I absolutely agree. I think the winner can come from anywhere in the top 6. I think if Harry and David work together, then maybe they can actually break away. But it depends whether they're sensible enough to work together like that. And you know, racing drivers, doesn't always work. Okay, we've got 12 seconds before the lights, so everyone getting ready. We've got David Rowe here and Harry Senior. Let's see who actually comes out ahead. Out of turn 1. And here we go then. So it's a good start for David Rowe, great start. They're all sort of tucking to the inside to protect the inside line. But it is David Rowe. He is following very closely behind Harry Senior, so coming down for the first time into Montreal, this is going to be the first braking test. Are they all going to make it? Certainly everyone's looking like they're well behaved currently. Okay, we're coming down to the next stopping point now, back down into Agostini. And again, everyone, I'm on tenterhooks just working out whether they're going to make it. I think we've lost Scott temporarily from the commentary box, so you're going to have to put up with my dulcet tones for a little while. Everyone in a long line of Caterhams, we have got one person losing it a bit back. It looks like that might be Mike Bennett. He's tumbling down the order a little bit, so the first one to lose the rear end. Like I say, that's not an uncommon thing in Caterhams. Especially in the simulator around Snetterton. It feels a little bit like the tracks are dusty. We've got Chris Skillicon obviously also falling down, so he's obviously had a little issue as well. Chris due to be in the academy this year, but hasn't actually been able to get out on track just yet, unfortunately. There we go, so Harry Senior's actually making a break, and it does look like David Rowe is getting involved. Nice little battle between David Rowe, Matthew Lewis and Steve McMaster here for the second, third and fourth. Matthew Lewis, it's the first time we've seen him on the circuit. It's great to have him here, obviously fully up to speed, and we've got some really good battles a little bit further back through the grid here, so you can see that we've got a nice big grid today, and everyone so far has been well behaved. Just following along with Paul Fernell in the middle of the pack, obviously a little bit pressured. You've got to try and attack, but also try and defend from behind. And behind him, following closely, is Steve Arnell. Remember, I said he's a very solid racer, very capable, and it'll be interesting to see that battle develop. So he's going to the outside to round Riches. It's quite a brave move, I would say, but here we go. We'll see whether they're going to make it out the other side. So Paul actually holds onto that line, very nicely papered, obviously letting the cars behind catch up. So again, it's going to be hold your breath and hope for the best, breaking down into the Wilson hairpin. Oh, we have had some contact, so there was, it's asking a little bit too much to go 5 wide. We've still got wheels interlocking, we've got to be really careful of it. Well done, they've sorted themselves out. Okay, so Steve Arnell has made some good progress there. Let's see whether he can now break free. Mark Ryder's following him, and Paul Fonia's still fighting away with Mark Riders. See whether he can get some of those places back. He's just lost. In the front battle here, Steve McMaster is just trailing by about 8 tenths from off the lead of the race. So of the car in front, which is Art Lewis, and David Rowe is still in second. He is 8 tenths back from Harry, so Harry's protecting that. He's just keeping him outside of the toe, where the toe starts kicking in. I'm sure that's where he'll want to keep him for the rest of the race. As we come down into the Brundle Nelson, much tidier this time, so good job. Let's go and have a look at a little bit further back down the line. So Jamie Elwood had a little bit of a problem, a little backdrop in places, but you can see now he's getting absolutely stuck back in. He's got Mike Hilton just in front of him, and Jamie Fowler is absolutely on his tail. There's a clump of 3 cars there, all fighting it out with Andy Steele also getting into the mix. So Jamie Elwood is at the front of that little pack of 3 cars. There's a little lock up, so he's drifted a little wide, but he's still managed to hold on to his position. So back with Harry Singer, he's actually managed to extend his lead now. He's pulled that out to about 1.2 seconds. And it looks like David Rowe is still fighting hard. David with Matthew Lewis. And Steve McMaster is now coming back into action as those two cost each other some time. Still hoping that Scott can rejoin us in the commentary box at some point. So we've got battles all the way down through the field. So let's go and have a look at Dan Halstead. He's having a nice little battle here with Andy Steele, and Alan Curtis is following him. The cars have actually spread themselves out into pack racing. This often happens in real Caterham racing because of the toe. In this case, I imagine there's some mistakes which have caused the gaps to appear, but it's great to see everyone still facing the right way and still circulating. So as Dan comes into Williams, it's one of the most important corners in British motorsport, one of the longest straights in British motorsport, just follows it, so you must get out of that corner and get the power down accurately. Let's see whether Dan can make a move down into the Brundle and Nelson S's. Again, one of the most tricky corners, just where you've got to turn the car, you've got to brake the car, and you've got to get yourself set up for the tight right, which is actually the most important bit of the corner to get right. In real life, that's quite a scary and daunting corner, so in the sim racing it's not quite so much, but it still gets it's still hard to so we have seen them actually have a coming together. Unfortunately they managed to have a tangle, which is not uncommon. Let's go and have a look at James Murphy. As I said earlier, he only finished his sim late last night, so he's doing very well. He's actually maintained his top 5 position. He's got a little gap ahead to Steve McMaster, but I'm sure he's hoping to bring that down in the coming laps. We've still got 8 minutes of the race to go. And as you can see, Steve actually made round wide, so immediately he's got a chance now to get involved and try and get that place. Can he make a move down into Agostini? Well, I guess time will tell. He doesn't look quite close enough to get the super toe, so he might just choose to settle back. But again, racing drivers being racing drivers, you can't always guarantee that. Again, Steve makes an actual mistake and drifts wide, so that does mean that it's gifted that place to James, and he's now up into 4th place. Great stuff there. David Rowe still trying to hang within that second. You can see him ahead there of Harry, but he is being constantly hounded by Matthew Lewis, and we'll wait to see whether James Murphy can actually catch up for this podium. So we've got a little breakaway there for the top 3 spots. I'm sure that will be going through their mind, and they'll be hoping that does actually sort of stays that way, so maybe they'll actually go a bit to protect and work together for a little bit until the clock runs down a little bit further, and then they feel like they can go for a move certainly Matthew Lewis looks the most interested in all that. David, I'm sure, is desperately trying to close down that gap. So a little bit further down the field here, we've got Ron Ball following around Jeff Newman. Again, you can see that there are actually battles going on all down the field, and that's really great to see. It's typical Caterham action. Good to see Jeff on the server again. He has joined us a number of times in the past, and again, he's learning the world of simulator racing, as are a lot of the people that you're seeing on the server. There's a lot of them actually driving in real life, but recently they've all been more interested in the simulator action because they can't get out on track, and we're seeing that they're all putting their simulators together and they're translating that into real world speed in the simulator as well. So it's good to see. Mark Ryder, again, nice little dice going on here. Mark Ryder's got Paul Ferneyhold just ahead, and McEwen is behind. So I think it was mentioned earlier, Tom's not actually ever raced a real car yet, but he has signed up for the Caterham Academy in 2021. That's going to come sooner than he thinks now. And it's good to see him in the racing. He's getting some early experience. And simulator racing really does translate back to the racetrack. Obviously, racing online with other racing drivers, all the psychology is exactly the same as it is out on track. So when do you make a move, when do you sit back and wait, and how do you make sure you move the drivers sort of out your way and to your advantage. He's doing a great job losing briefly as Mark Ryder there. Mark is another driver who Katie has. He's got a raggedy style, shall I say? I don't think that's too insulting. Again, he's a rapid driver and he's in the top 10, solidly in the top 10 at the moment. But obviously, McEwen is keeping the pressure on quite nicely there. McEwen actually sort of fell back down the field early doors, so he's obviously fighting back through. So can he make a move? He's decided to sit back a little. It's a little nudge into Brundle. That is going to push Mark Ryder wide, but they've managed to make it through. We have that one car overcut across the grass there. I don't think there was contact. That's good news. Okay, back out front. Not a lot has actually changed out front. You can still see David. In fact, David Rowe has lost that place now. So in the last few seconds, Matthew has got past David Rowe. I wonder whether now that he's free of David, he can actually bridge that gap, and maybe David can hook onto the back of him to break that. Certainly, there's a lot of pressure on Harry right now. I think he's feeling like a chased rabbit at the moment. Two greyhounds after him. Further back down, Andy Lees is just having an issue, I think, out on track. He's dropping down the order a little bit, so he's dropped to 16th. Great to see so many cars still circulating. Simulator racing is notoriously tricky, and we do occasionally see some spills and spills, but today it's been good so far, and touch wood, that will continue. So it does now look like the gap is actually extended out to Harry in front, so he's now managed to move that out to a second and a half. So it hasn't worked. Matthew's not able to close that gap, but David Rowe is still sort of in contention for that final spot of the podium. Meanwhile, the midfield battle still rages on. Mark Ryder there actually got Ian Payne just has called up to this battle now. He's making himself his presence felt. He also had an issue slightly early doors, which moved him down the order, but he has now put himself back into that top 10. Again, down the long Bentley straight. Normally, you've got enough time to have a bit of a relax and a bit of check of the dials, but as you can see, there's no rest here for Mark, and Ian's actually going for the outside. That's an interesting and brave move. It's very dusty out there, and it doesn't actually work out from this time. I wonder whether he's going to get a run on him though through to the bomb hole. certainly that looks like it's going to be a battle that is interesting through to the end of the race. We've got 2 minutes left, only 2 minutes, so probably just about 2 laps left, the one they're on, or the one the leaders are on, and then maybe just about one more. It's going to be tight to see whether that's the case. So let's go back to that lead battle then, just to see how they're going. Sort of still remains a bit status quo, although David Rowe does look like he has managed to catch up very slightly. Let's go on board with him now and just see whether he can actually close that gap. Just going around Palmer. Palmer's one of those tracks with corners you really have to sort of hurry up and wait. You want to get the car turned and you really want to get back on the throttle, but if you go too early and you do drift out wide, it's very easy to do that. Agostini here getting a nice late apex, drifts a little bit wide. That's not going to help his aim. I guess he's pushing hard to try and close that gap down. We've got Hamilton here. You just want to maintain as much momentum as you can. You don't really gain time in there, you only lose it. And then we're coming down to Oggies, slowing it nicely down. It's really tricky to get the power down in these cars, and while still getting that car to turn, really working those tyres hard. Williams is really important corner. Nicely hooked up with the apex there so he can get a nice run down. But as you can see, he's actually dropped now to a second behind Matthew Lewis. And Matthew is actually a second, 1.2 behind Harry Seaman. So unfortunately for the time being, it looks like this might be settled in for the win. There's, like I say, this is their penultimate lap. They'll have one more to go. Further back, let's just go and have a quick look at the PT Sports car. So Ian Payne and Mark Ryder, they're still going absolutely hammer and tong. See who's going to get this who's going to get 8th place. So again, Mark Ryder goes very defensive there. That's going to push him wide. Can Ian make a move around the outside? He can't, but he manoeuvred him enough to get the bomb hole run. It's a bomb hole run. I think he's spun, so Ian Payne has actually spun the car. Unfortunately, he's now going to drop down to 11th, maybe 12th if Jamie Elwood can actually make a move. So that's a shame for Pete. I guess he felt he had to give it a go. Maybe got on the power a bit too early. And just the rear end just stepped out on him. So here we go. We are on to the final lap of the race then. Status quo. In fact, the gaps are creeping out even further. Maybe some of these guys are settled. Given that it's actually tricky to get the power down and there's a risk every time, maybe they have settled into a bit of a rhythm here. But Harry has been out in front, I think, from lights to this point. So as long as he can maintain this just for a few more corners, I think he's looking good for another win. Now, Harry he won the double last time out. And in fact, he has been winning more than anything else on our server. He rarely finishes off the podium, if ever. He's a very solid driver and has some great speed. Really good to see. Can Matthew, can David do anything about this? Stephen Masters in 4th, but he is 6 seconds back, so he's not going to be challenging this unless something really catastrophic happens in this lead battle. We've got James Murphy again doing a great job, 1.6 seconds back from Steve Master. We've got Steve Arnell. Remember, Steve was the person I said was a very solid racer, and he has proven again a really solid top 6 performance with Paul Ferneyhoff, James Fowler and Mark Ryder topping out that top 10. So we're coming to the bomb hole for the final time then. And again, looks like he's disappearing off onto the horizon now. Imperici going to take another victory. I hope that's not commentator's curse. I'm not used to this commentary stuff. I shouldn't be testing the curse of the commentator, should I? But he's done a nice tidy race, and it looks like he could actually pretty much push it over the line now for that. So here he comes up to the checkered flag then. He's celebrating his win. Good job, Harry. That's a great win. Great under extreme pressure from Matthew Lewis and David Rowe. And we should have Stephen Masters now crossing the line. James Murphy finishes in 5th. Next up will be Steve Arnell. There we go. Paul Ferneyhoff is going to be next over the line. He crosses safely in 7th place. Great top 10 for Paul Ferneyhoff. He's not a real world racer, but he shows that in the sim world you don't need to have necessarily real world experience. Mark Ryder and Tom McEwen finishing in 9th and 10th. Ian Payne just outside the top 10 in that 11th place. So here we go. Next up is Jamie Elwood, 12th. Then we're going to have Alan Curtis in 13th. Great to see the battles have lasted all the way through to the end of the race. Just waiting for the last few races. Richard Hoare is due next. He's a little bit further back than that. I think he is the final finisher. They're just waiting for. Can see him actually in the distance coming around the final few corners. Let's follow him into his drive up to the line. Great done. Well done, Richard, for getting to the end of the race. Okay, so let's just go back over that finishing order then. We've got Harry Senior, who came home in first, with Matthew Lewis at second, David Rowe in third. And we've got Steve McMaster came fourth, James Murphy fifth, Steve Arnell sixth, Paul Funny seventh, James Fowler eighth, Mark Ryder was ninth, and Tom McEwing rounded out the top 10. Ian Payne was 11th, Jamie Elwood 12th, Chris Skillicon 13th, Alan Curtis 14th, Andy Steele 15th, Dan Halstead 16th, Mark Lipitsky 17th, 18th was Mike Hilton, 19th Jeff Newman, 20th was Mark Burnett, 21st was Richard Hoare, and Andy Lees finished in the pit lane. Well done to all the drivers. So we've got just over 2 minutes before the start of the next race. We're actually going to be running in the same order that we finished. So we will have Harry Senior on pole. So the order that I've just read out is also the order for the grid. So you can see all the cars in the pit lane waiting. So we have 2 minutes to allow the drivers to get out onto the grid. It's great to see a full field, colourful Caterhams. Thanks to all the drivers for making the time and to join in. It's really great to see. Okay, just got about a minute and a half before the lights are due to go out. Again, let's read down the order once more, just so that you get the feel for that. Harry Senior in the black and gold car is in pole position. We've got David Rowe in the green car. Sorry, we've got David Rowe finished third in the red car there, and then we had Steve McMaster, you can see, in the yellow car. So it's it was Matthew in second, wasn't it? My timing screen, unfortunately, is showing me the wrong data, so I'm just getting that sorted. It's about 30 seconds now before we get to get the flags. You can see here the drivers now starting to rev their engines. They're kind of getting impatient, want to get going. Obviously, in real life, we have in the 420Rs, there's two 30-minute races. So actually, this is an unusual gap for them in the middle of the race. But let's see how David and Harry get off the slide at the lights. You can see the lights are coming on now, and it's go. David Rowe is actually holding that inside line. Harry Senior is going to the outside. Sorry, Matthew, I apologise. Matthew, he's actually taken the lead. So great stuff. Matthew Lewis actually taken the lead from Harry there. Harry's diving to the outside down to Montreal. Lots of the late breakers. There's a little locking up from behind. Are we going to get the cars? No, we've got Matthew actually sideways. Well done, everyone, for avoiding the carnage. Hopefully, everyone's going to come out of that not too. We've had some people dropping down the order. Absolute pack racing here. It's 3 wide coming out of Palmer. That's pretty amazing. Another big break into Agostini here coming up, and David Rose actually managed to make himself push himself through into the lead. Can he hold on? Can he stay tight so he didn't make the same mistake as we saw him make before? We've had a little bit of a spin. That is Matthew Lewis. Unfortunately, he's going to now drop down the order a little bit, so it'll be interesting to see if he can fight back through the remainder of the race. Gosh, it's breathless stuff here. So Harry Senior now is back into that second place. Locking up his tyres front left there just gently, but hasn't lost any speed. Steve McMaster following along nice and closely, waiting to pick up the pieces should anything go wrong. Got Steve Arnell actually making a brilliant start there to 4th. I think that's probably about 7th to 4th he's made, so he's made benefit out of all the shenanigans down at the Montreal hairpin. Expect to see him start to close that gap. And following Steve, we've got James Fowler. Oh, they're drifting a little bit wide around the Brundle and Nelson S's. But I think they've all made it. I can't hear anyone having gone off, so that's great. James Murphy is in 7th, so he has dropped, so he lost out a little bit. Paul Ferniehoff down 1 place as well. Dave just left a little gap there at the inside, but no room for Harry to make it way through. Steve McMaster still loitering. You can see that Steve Arnell has broken away very slightly from James Fowler behind, and they've got a little three-way battle going up the main straight here. Steve McMaster actually lost out in acceleration there. Here's Harry making a move to the outside for the lead then. Can he make it around the outside? Dave tucks it in nicely. Has he compromised himself for the exit there? No, he does. He holds it down onto the apex, but it is going to be close coming down into the Montreal hairpin. Dave takes the inside line and does manage to stop the car, although he's drifted wide, has also gone wide. Here we go. They're still side by side. They've been right next to each other for like 3 corners. That brilliant stuff. Palmer, David's still on the inside, so he's still managing to hold the battle, but Harry has held on. Can they still make this? Oh, they have actually had a little tiny bit of contact. They look like they're all survived. They're still going at it, and Stephen Master is now really licking his lips, saying, "Come on, it's my turn now." It's brilliant. So Steve Arnell can he make that gap? He needs to make more benefit from the fact that these guys are fighting up front. See whether he can really draw that back. And just behind Steve Arnell, we've got James Murphy back up to 5th, so he's made up those 2 places that he lost. We have James Fowler following him, Mark Ryder also up. We're seeing Paul Ferniehoff drop down the order slightly, so he must have either gone wide or made a small mistake. I don't want to leave this lead battle. It's absolutely brilliant to see. Okay, we've got another, again, like I said earlier, normally you check your gauges down this straight, but we haven't. We've got Harry pulling to the outside. Another Dave defending great position, but actually Harry's got a little run and he has made it stick around the outside. So difficult to do that. It's dusty out there. It's really hard to get the car stopped. So that is a great move, and well done to the both of them for making that work. Although Dave is absolutely fighting back immediately. Can he make up the inside to Coram? He's certainly making a move. He has. He's got the overlap. Can Harry hold up around the outside again? It's a very, very tough move around there. It's a very tight corner, this final one. There's a little bit of contact there, but nothing too underneath. Great racing by these front guys. And actually, even though they are battling, they have a little gap. I don't know whether, again, Steve McMaster has had a little mistake or whether he's decided to give them a little bit of space just in case they do have a tangle. We've got David now up the inside, going into turn 1. Can Harry go get around the outside? He's only being offered the outside line, and that's obviously the normal racing tactic, but he has managed again to carry that momentum, but Dave's still got the inside line into the Montreal hairpin. It says Wilson on the inside there, but it's definitely the Montreal hairpin. Harry a little bit wide around the outside there, but it does mean that you get a nice run into Palmer's, but usually there's not enough space to actually make that stick, so he's going to have to be a bit patient at the moment. Wait for the next opportunity, which is down to Agostini. Getting the power down is very important at that corner, just so you can try and protect your inside line. I'm sure we'll see Dave going to the inside again to protect that line, and he does. Harry actually choosing to take the more racing line and see whether he can get fire himself out up to Hamilton. He's certainly got a run, but again, there's not normally enough space up to the Hamilton corner to make anything happen. So he is just sat absolutely in the toe there. Absolute nose-to-tail racing. Lost a little bit of the rear end, but still managing to keep his momentum. Dave absorbing this pressure. We saw from the first race that Harry was actually slightly faster than the other two around him. So I'm sure that if he does get ahead, he has got the potential to move away. And David obviously wants to stop that from happening at all costs, knowing that he has got that extra speed. There we go, there's a brilliant sight, the three of them heading off down the Bentley Straight. Again, only offered the outside, but he takes it. He made it work last time. Can he make it work again? No, this time David actually gets the braking right. He is slightly compromised into Nelson, but he does still protect it, and I don't think there's enough room for Harry to make it through the bomb hole. There are some great battles going on further down the order, but I do want to keep with this lead battle. It's very, very Moorish, I have to say. Let's go on board and let's watch from Harry's point of view. David locking up just a touch there. As we come up, still 8 minutes to go in this race, so still a lot of time for things to develop. You can see the little toe now coming up, and he's got a little bit of momentum. Again, only offered the outside of the track, and he's going to take that offer. Can he make it stick? He's late on the brakes as much as he dares. He hasn't got it. I haven't seen the David go up the inside. He looks like he's made it. So great manoeuvre again around the outside, but David is fighting back immediately. Doesn't quite make it, so Harry actually managed to get down the inside. They both lock up. David's gone wide. Hopefully he won't spin it. He just managed to hold on the Stephen McMaster. All that patience. It looks like it's to be paying off now. He is going to defend his second place now. Oh, David does do a late dive. Still side-by-side action. I don't think David's had a lap where he's not been side-by-side with another car, and it still looks like it's going to continue. Can Harry make good? He has broken that little gap, little lock up into the hairpin, but actually still maintaining momentum. Great stuff. As you can see, we've got Steve Arnell still kind of waiting there, seeing what can happen. James Murphy just behind him, James Fowler in 6th, Mark Ryder 7th, we've got Bernhoff in 8th, Matthew Lewis. Remember, Matthew from the first race was in 2nd, so he has had a drop down and hasn't quite managed to make it up through the top 10. Then we have Mark Bennett. Excuse me. We have Bennett, then we have Ian Payne, Andy Steele, Tom McEwen, Alan Curtis, Chris Skillicon, Jeff Newman, Hilton, we've got Halstead and Lees in sort of pretty much rounding out the top 20 cars. Okay, as that gap has at least managed to get to a little bit above half a second, let's go and have a look at some other close battles to see. We saw that Matthew Lewis had fallen back, so let's see how he's progressing. He's in a nice little battle here. He's got Mark Ryder ahead of him, alongside him right now, and we've got Paul Fernhill in front of him, so he's going to be looking to make some of that ground he lost out on and make that stick coming up here into reaches. Everyone sticks to the inside here. In real life we protect from the wind, and it's also a slightly smoother track end here. He's got the inside line, so he's squeezed himself underneath Mark Ryder there, and all things being equal, he will make this move stick, although Mark is holding on around the outside, but he just tried too much. Again, got almost egged into that, got encouraged to outbreak himself, and that's exactly what he did. So Mark Lewis now onwards, hoping to hunt down Paul Fernhill, who drifts wide at Montreal, so he's making his job quite a bit easier. Paul Fernhill got a solid top 10 in the first race. Can he hold off the rise back through the field? Ian Payne's having another great race. He's just behind Mark Bennett. You can see him here in the sort of multicoloured BMW art-inspired car. So he's not been out of a battle since we joined him in the last race. It looks like it's picked up straight where he left off. He's unfortunately had that spin which dropped it down the order slightly, so he's having to fight back through again. Tucking it round Oggies, coming out onto Williams, and then we'll be down the Bentley Straight. Can he make a move on Mark going into the Brundle Nelson S's? A little bit of a gap there, doesn't mean it's not going to happen. He's now got the toe, and he actually does get a nice toe up to the inside. He's going down the inside. Can he get it stopped, and can they both go sideways? Actually, Mark has defended really well there. He managed to hold on. Again, not easy to do, and actually kept the momentum, so he's got a little bit of a gap and a little bit of breather again. Let's go and check in with the top of the field again, just to see how they're getting on their battle. Whilst Steve Arnell there getting a bit out of shape behind in his fight, I guess, with James Murphy. He was actually moved up to 4th. Unfortunately, didn't see what happened there, but it looks like that's some interesting shenanigans going through the last Murray's corner. Yep, so it has again spread out. The pressure has been relentless, but it does look like it has settled into its order. David, I'm sure, will take position up from his first and senior master again. He's going to get a podium if this all stays the same. We've got about 3 minutes, in fact, got 3 minutes 48 seconds to go. So still a couple, maybe 3 more laps to get in, depending on how the time all washes itself out. So James Fowler and Steve Arnell going to come here. Steve obviously has lost a place there to James. You can see James Murphy out in front in the green car, Steve Arnell in the orange car, and then we've got James Fowler losing the rear end there. So let's say it's so easy to do that around here. If you lose concentration for a second or you're slightly offline, you do happen to, it's so easy to lose the rear end of these cars. Oggies again, another relentless turn, trying to keep that rear end. You can see James holding onto the car, just trying to make it turn. Can James Murphy make any impression? I think with 2 minutes 50 to go, I think it's a little bit too much to make his move up to the podium. I think Steve Master might have that sewn up. There's a 5-second gap, so that's quite heavy. Steve's actually closing the gap to David Rowe as this race progresses. So again, can we see this battle close up, or have they all settled into their positions?
I thought I'd just quickly jump in. I have to apologise if I was absent. I had some technical issues with my phone. I do sincerely apologise for leaving Chris on his own there to commentate, but I am back and I have been following the race, so it's been quite an intriguing race so far, isn't it, with 2 minutes and 15 seconds left to go. It's been absolutely relentless, Scott. I think it's great stuff. The lead battle has now calmed down, but it was side by side, I think, for probably 3 or 4 corners, and just breathless stuff. Yeah, it was indeed. I was then when I realised after about 10 minutes, my Discord does do that sometimes on my app, but I realised I was talking to myself for about 10 minutes, but it was at least keeping tabs on what was going on. But even so, this, you're right, as you're rightly saying, the battle has been going on for the last 10 to 12 minutes, pretty much relentlessly back and forth between particularly Senior Rowe and McMaster, these 3 on the screen. And it did look as though at one point that we were going to see a different race winner in maybe David Rowe, but Harry Senior managed to find his way through with some audacious moves once or twice. Once around the outside in front of Nelson, and the other one I think was around the outside into Ritchie. So definitely making the most of his expertise on this point. But as you say, now less than a minute and a half to go. It has calmed down somewhat between the top 3. The closest battle now appears to be, if we go back down to 5th and 6th, with Steve Arnell. By looks of the timing, has got James Fowler and Matthew Lewis all over the back of him, and indeed he has. So Steve Arnell not being allowed to relax here for the last couple of laps, is now diving up the inside to pick up what looks to be now. That is going to be 6th position or 7th. So it's Fowler, Arnell and Lewis together. I think Lewis has actually gone through, I think, by the looks of it. And that's Murphy, my apologies. Murphy's gone through into 4th. And it's Fowler and Arnell that are battling, with Lewis trying to catch up 1.5 seconds back, and they're going side by side, and Fowler got very sideways on the exit, tucking in behind Arnell, but cracking stuff with 45 seconds to go. Not ideal to lose the rear end on that corner, but because he's got the little bit of a toe, he's actually going to make a move back up the inside again. So can Steve Arnell hold onto the outside, or is he going to concede that position and hope that he can make it back again on the next lap? Sometimes the bravest thing to do is to leave it until the last lap, just so there's no chance for reply. But he's still fighting back. It looks like he might be going up the inside of Bomhole. He did have a go. He did try, but he almost just about succeeded. Look, I thought he was going to go straight on at the apex, but thankfully he managed to gather it back up. But look who it's brought back into play now, because Arnell finds himself in a sandwich between Fowler and Arnell. Fowler goes deep around the outside because he knows he has to go to the inside line to defend from Arnell on the apex of Murray's, which he does. And all this says is Matthew Lewis thinking, right, you two keep on scrapping. I'll get past the pair of you if you don't mind. Onto the pit strip. We have started the final lap of the race. It is now side by side with Fowler on the right on screen, Arnell on the left. Is Lewis going to dare to make it 3 abreast towards Richie's corner? Yes, he will. This is typical Caterham racing. Fowler's in the middle, Lewis on the outside, and it's Fowler who wins the whole shot into turn 1. Lewis centred around the outside line, and Arnell's the sitting duck as he loses 2 space in one corner. Here comes Lewis again, diving up the inside. Fowler throws the block and says, no, you don't. Down the outside again goes Arnell to try and repass him. over each other at the Wilson hairpin. Somehow Fowler's still come out on top. It's now, we've got Arnell going side by side with Lewis, who in turn is trying to look round the outside of Fowler. Through Palmer Corner they go for the last time. And this battle continues to rage. It's up with the leads. The gap is still 1.2 seconds between Senior and Rowe. We'll look to that in a second. But again, it's almost 3 abreast once more as Fowler defends the inside line for Lewis, who continues to force the issue. Locks it inside front into Agostini. Fowler runs wide, but can't get. He prevents Lewis from getting the undercut. He slots back in again behind Fowler. This is over 5th position. And 7th place for Arnell as they turn through the left-hander. And up towards the complex at Oggies now. This is the final time. And again, Lewis is relentless on their attack, looking one way then the other. All Arnell can do at this moment is watch. There's a big sided moment for Fowler as he gets on. It's for that was Lewis as he got on the pad, getting a little frustrated. We've now got one final run down the Bentley Straight for the first time, and it is still side by side. Lewis has got his nose in front. Neither have got the benefit of a toe. The crucial thing is Arnell has. Fowler slots in back behind Lewis to try and get past him once more on the run down towards the complex. We are approaching the final few corners for our leaders. We'll have to check in with the battle for 5th and the 2nd. We can't almost take our eyes off it because it's so close as Lewis goes down the inside line. And as that continues to rage, if they start tumbling down the order, we'll know something's happened. But into the complex for the final time. And despite the best efforts of David Rowe and Steve McMaster, they threw everything they could at him. But it hasn't quite worked just yet. They'll have to wait till next week because Harry Senior is going to make it an incredible 4 wins out of 4. He weaves delightedly again across the line. He will make it a brace here at Snetterton tonight in the caterhamracer.com Caterham 420R Championship. 2nd for David Rowe after heroic effort leading at one point. And Steve McMaster 3rd. James Murphy gets 4th.
It looks like Fowler did actually spin coming out of the final corner. He's tumbling down the order, so unfortunately that battle did end in tears.
I told you something would happen off camera, didn't I? So 5th place goes for Lewis, 6th now for Bernhouse, 7th for Arnell. So looks like they're possibly looking at it. I think Lewis possibly tries to defend the position again, not seeing it completely on camera, but whatever happened, Fowler was the one that came off worse. He's dropped down to 10th. So it's Lewis who finishes 5th behind James Murphy in P4, 6th place for Paul Fernhouse, 7th for Steve Arnell, 8th for Ian Payne, 9th for Mark Ryder, and James Fowler rounds out the top 10 with Bennett, Skillicorn, Ewing, Steele, Curtis, Hilton, Halstead, Newman and Lees, with Elwood and Lipitsky rounding out the other 2 cars sadly that didn't finish the race, and also Andy Lees also pitted late on in the race as well. So the last couple of cars make their way across the start and finish line, and that, by the looks of things, is that for our 2 races tonight. So that is it. So 4 races from 4 for Harry Senior then. It looks as though that he is the man to try and stop. It's almost like we've got a very own Gordon Sawyer in this championship. He did exactly the same thing, didn't he? He was dominant in the first couple of races despite everything that everyone tried to throw at him. But in that race, compared to the first one, when he was about a second and a half clear for the most part for the entire race, this time by Chris, as you saw from most of the race and as I saw from not being able to commentate and not having any audio coming through, which again I apologise for, but he didn't have it easy that way. In fact, David Rowe got a better start from him at the opening couple of laps, but then Harry had to get his elbows out and pull off some pretty brave moves to get himself back to the front in that one.
He just had that little bit of extra speed, didn't he? That you just knew that if he could get past David, then he would be able to do that little breakaway and things would spread out. But it was by no means certain, and David, positioned his car exactly as you want to do. So always tucking on the inside, and okay, a couple of times he did. Harry pulled off the move around the outside, but it didn't always stick. So it was, you always got the feeling he might do it, and it was good to see that he achieved it. And it's always nice to see someone get sort of that 4-peat. But having said that, he will be absolutely in the targets of everyone coming into the next round next week.
Good stuff. So speaking of next week, for those who want to possibly take part, I think at the moment we agree this is mainly for those who are associated with you or who have Caterham racing experience, whether it is the motorsport side or elsewhere. There are 2 championships which are taking place. There is a Monday night championship for Caterham Academy spec cars. That is following that mirrors the 2020 what would have been originally the Caterham Graduates calendar. So we've had the rounds at Silverstone and Donington Park so far, and we're moving on to a big one actually next time for Caterham Academy, Silverstone on the Grand Prix circuit. That's going to be taking place, set to take place around about 8:20 on May the 4th. So that's going to be on Monday. And as for the 420Rs, not for the first time they've done this in real life, but certainly for the first time in this sort of esports championship. The 420Rs on next Friday at the same time, 20 past 8, are going to head north of the border into Bonnie, Scotland, and to Fife and the excellent short circuit of Knock Hill. Now, compared to last time when those guys went up there, Chris, I'm presuming it's the correct way around and not the reverse layout.
That's right. It'll be the first time that we go around the correct way around that track, so it'll be another new one for everyone to learn. And again, it's a roller coaster, that track. It's never knowingly flat anywhere. Everywhere is on a hill, and it's a brilliant roller coaster of a very much a driver's challenge. So it would be interesting to see who comes out on top with that challenge.
Yeah, certainly will. If anyone who's been following Caterham racing for the last couple of years will know that Caterham did visit Knock Hill in 2018, but as part of the TCR UK race weekend, they were utilising the reverse layout, which is licensed by Motorsport UK. So it's pretty much Knock Hill as you'd normally see it, but rather than sort of going down the sort of flowing downhill chicane, the first corner was actually what's normally on the proper way around, the final hairpin, and that can be quite a challenge. And also, particularly when you go around the other way, through what is that very steep uphill chicane halfway through, it becomes quite a launching pad for some Caterhams if you're going pretty quickly over that. So that is on the 8th of May. We are planning, I believe, to go live again next Friday on the 8th of May at the same time. They'll be racing around that very short, sharp Knock Hill circuit. To give an idea of how long we're racing as well, it's the next few weeks also too. So we have got, for the calendar, we've got for the Academy Championship, it's every Monday for the next few weeks. So we've got the 11th of May at Anglesey. All virtual representations, of course, bear in mind. 18th of May is going to be at Zandvoort, of course, in the Netherlands. I believe it will be the previous original version, not the current. I don't think there's been a modded version yet for the new Grand Prix.
We're hoping, Scott, that actually we have got an option for the modded version.
Oh.
So watch this space, and with interest, I will
Excellent.
be hoping to have a banked corner on the final end.
That will be quite an experience. That'll be quite good because we'll get to see how the Caterham drivers get their first experience, at least virtually, of the new Grand Prix circuit. They were originally going to be heading there in sort of early mid-July, but sadly, due to the ongoing situation, this year's appearance in Europe at Zandvoort sadly is not going to happen, which is unfortunate. But of course, safety comes first in many cases. But they will be, hopefully, if there is a newer version, getting to try out the new Grand Prix circuit virtually on the 18th of May. Then the weekend after that, we're back to Snetterton for the Caterham. Well, it's for their first time at least. It'll be on the 200 circuit on the 25th of May, and then they'll be finishing off on the 1st of June on that Monday at Alton Park. As for the 420Rs, we've got, as we say, Knock Hill coming up next week. Then next Friday after that is going to be Zandvoort on the 15th of May. Then after that, it's going to be a very fast circuit. You thought Snetterton was fast. That ain't got nothing on Thruxton. 22nd of May, where they'll be heading around what is effectively now, with the sad demise of Rockingham, the fastest circuit in the UK. Then they'll head to the tight but twisty but very fast confines of Brands Hatch Indy on the 29th of May. And they'll finish off one of the two typical season finale venues for Caterham Motorsport, and that is Donington Park on the national circuit on the 5th of June. So if you are a Caterham racer, or you're associated in Caterham racing in some way, shape or form, and you fancy giving this a bash, I guess what you need to do is head to caterhamracer.com and get in touch, I'm sure, with Chris. He's be around everywhere, I'm sure, on socials to get in touch with, and I'm sure he'll be more than happy to welcome you on the grid. So good racing tonight then, again, Chris, as always, but that's it. And I'm sure with what's be set up for the next few weeks, while we wait for real racing to get back underway, it should be quite a spectacle, hopefully, both with the Academy guys and the 420Rs.
I cannot wait.
Good stuff. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for everybody who has been watching tonight. As we say, we'll be going live. Just to ask the question, are we looking to maybe go live with Academy, or is it just 420Rs at the moment?
I am very much open to doing both. If people are interested, then they should get in contact and let me know that they want to see more of this, and we can certainly make that happen.
Good stuff. So hopefully, if people want it, we'll see you hopefully back on Monday for the Caterham Academies on the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit. And if in any other case, it'll be this time again next week when the 420Rs will be back in action, but they will be heading, as we say, virtually north of the border to Knock Hill on the proper way around, May the 8th on 20 past 8 British summertime. But from myself, Scott Woodwist, and Chris Hutchison, and all the drivers who've been racing at Snetterton tonight, thank you for watching, and hopefully we'll see you at some point next week for more Caterham racing action from caterhamracer.com and the Academy and 420R Championships. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.